Hey, this is Jackie Hauser with Flexner Hauser Injury Law. Welcome to our podcast. Today we're talking about something a little grim, and so we wanted to tell you at the outset that we're going to be talking about wrongful death claims and the value of wrongful death claims, and just wanted to let you know in case that triggers something or in case this is just not something that you're prepared to listen to today. You can always come back and hear it at a different time. But today we're going to be addressing that very difficult subject. So there may not be much laughter in this episode of Laughter in the Law.
Yeah.
But it is an important topic, and we thought that it needed to be addressed. And so we'll try to do that. Another thing to think about is that as in the legal profession, we're dealing with it from an analytical perspective, not the emotional perspective.
Right.
And so, and we can't deal with it from the emotional perspective because then we just would puddle and just not be beneficial at all.
Yeah.
So we really have to separate our emotions from the actual claim and focus on what we can do to help bring value to the loss of life. And so many times that's, 100% of the time, it can't be made from an emotional place. It has to be made from an analytical place because the client brings the emotion, and the jury certainly understands that, or the arbitrator, or whoever makes the final decision, whether it's the insurance company or whether it goes all the way to trial. And so, but because even though it's a difficult topic, we wanted to see and hopefully give it the best that we can. And addressing this and kind of addressing some of the issues that you'll face in a wrongful death claim.
Yeah. So first, what is a wrongful death claim?
Yeah, and that's just it. There's you can have a wrongful death claim in any area of law. So it can be medical malpractice that caused a wrongful death. It can be an auto case, a fatality, which we have those every day. I mean, you're going to see them in the news every day. Someone, either a pedestrian or someone died in an accident. Certainly boating accidents and airplane and helicopter accidents. All of those could be negligence actions, but also be wrongful death actions. Workers' comp. We've had workers' comp accidents where, the person not only had a workers' comp claim, but they died as a result of their workers' comp injury. So any of those could be negligence actions, malpractice actions, but they're also wrongful death actions.
But they are kind of still separate. Like you would have the medical malpractice and then the wrongful death from medical malpractice, right?
Yes, you would have to prove that the wrongful death was caused by the malpractice.
So could there be more than one cause of action?
Yes, there could. Like if you had a workers' comp case, let's say that you have a workers' comp case and someone's working on the job, but their death is caused, they're on the job, so that's a workers' comp case if they die on the job, but then it's caused by somebody else's negligence. Somebody failed to put up a safety guard or somebody drove through a barricade. Then that person that other outside person could also be negligent for their injury. And so you'd have a separate cause of action for that.
Wow.
We had a wrongful death. One of the wrongful death cases that I first thought about whenever we were talking about this podcast was this father who died in a car accident. And he was crossing over a median, and he was doing everything lawfully, but someone was...
As a pedestrian?
I'm sorry, in his car.
In his car.
Good question.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was crossing over the median and making a left turn across highway lanes.
This was the legal thing over the median.
Absolutely.
Like not in a median.
A cut through.
Okay.
Through the median.
There we go. Because I've seen those people that are like, I'm just going to drive through this little dip in the median and head the other way.
Whenever I had a truck, I did the same thing.
But this was a legal cut through over a median. Okay.
Yes. To get onto a side road.
Okay.
It wasn't an intersection, but it was just a cut through to get to a side road.
Okay.
And a speeding vehicle hit his vehicle, and he died as a result. And so that left 3 little girls without their daddy. And, and there's you can't put a price tag on that. I mean, he was a loving father from everything I understood. And, and so he certainly had value in his life, and he certainly had value to his family. But what you have to think about is how much you have to think about how much insurance is available for this life, right? So one of the first things you want to make sure of, and hopefully everyone has this, is have some life insurance. If you're providing for your family, you need to be able to provide for whenever you're not there, should something happen to you, God forbid.
Right.
But secondly, beyond that, the person who caused the accident, how much insurance do they have? That's certainly a concern. How much insurance did he have under insured motorist coverage, which we talked about before? And then another thing to think about, which we did in this claim, is, was this intersection designed properly?
Oh.
And so we went and hired an expert, and the question was about the design of the intersection, and could we have a claim against the Department of Transportation for failure to design a proper intersection. And what you do then is you start doing some studies. You gather statistics, which, by the way, the DMV has. They just give you their statistics.
Wow.
How many wrecks have been at this intersection, how many fatalities, and things like that.
Yeah.
And so you then could actually pursue that as an additional claim. And that's just an example of how, whenever you hire an attorney to represent you, they're thinking about all those things. They're thinking ahead, and they're being proactive so that they can recover, or at least I am, so that I can recover the maximum amount for this family. I can't bring Dad back, but I can do everything I can to help those little girls so that they're set for life, just like their daddy would want them to be. He'd want them to be set for life.
Yeah.
And that's my goal. And so, I'm working in that from an analytical perspective and not from an emotional perspective. So that's one of the things about wrongful death. It could be in any area of law. And the second thing you need to think about is that with wrongful death is that there are mortality tables, and all they are fancy calculations that insurance. They kind of come from insurance companies, but they're also adopted by statute about how long we're supposed to live.
Yeah, that was my understanding, is that they say that we're supposed to live like 75-ish years.
I think it's 77 or 78 now.
Oh, yay! Yay!
It used to be different. Actually, back in the dark ages, whenever I started, there were different numbers. Women had higher mortality tables than men.
Oh.
And now women do not have higher mortality. Now we're just all the same.
Okay.
Yeah, congratulations. Welcome to equal rights. So, we're all going to die at the same time. Now, that being said, I've never had a problem with an insurance company saying, oh, here's the check. We're not going to say that this 10-year-old girl was going to be, a vagrant or of no use to her family.
Yeah.
Because the 10-year-old girl is going to grow up, and in more cases than not, she's going to be the caregiver for her parents at some point in life, where the roles are going to be reversed. And we all know that. And that's going to be a value. We can put dollars and cents on. We can hire a life care planner. We can hire an economist. And we can calculate all those things out, what the value of those kind of services would be to your elderly parents, in 20 or 30 or 40 years. It really depends on what kind of insurance are we talking about. Are we talking about a $100,000 policy? That's just a no-brainer. They're going to pay the $100,000 whenever we're involved. Or are we talking about a $100 million policy? Well, we might not get $100 million for a 10-year-old because we don't know what the potential is.
Yeah.
And so, those kind of things are just things that you have to take into consideration. And the more insurance you're dealing with, the higher the insurance. Like if you're dealing with a trucking company that's caused this accident, they probably are going to have a $10 million policy. They may have a $20 million policy. And so you just have to think about, how are you going to prove the value of this life? And so those are just difficult conversations to have. And you have to be creative and unique in the way that you create that value. And I think we do a good job of hiring nursing experts and life care planners and economists to help us with that, to create as much value as we can in those situations.
That also sounds like a lot of expensive case expenses.
It does. It does. But you know what? In a wrongful death case, usually that's just not even a consideration because you want to be able to recover the maximum for that family.
Yeah.
You know, in any way you can. You're not going to leave any stone unturned on that one.
Yeah. So what was your first wrongful death experience?
The first one, I remember it vividly because it wasn't my case.
Oh.
Yeah, it wasn't my case. And I don't remember what the case was about. I don't remember whether it was a med mal or whether it was an auto case. I can't tell you that because it wasn't my case.
Right,
I literally was inserted in the case and then taken out of the case for one purpose. And my only purpose in being in that case was the deposition of a mother when her little girl had died. And I think the little girl was like 5 or 6. She was very young. And so all these men in my firm who handled these types of cases, at that point I didn't have any wrongful death cases, but all these men in my firm were like, we're not going. We're sending Jackie. We're not going.
Oh, so they chickened out.
Yeah.
And sent a woman.
Yeah. And I know why they chickened out because they were going to sit there and tear up and they wanted to be big, strong men.
Yeah.
And so they sent me instead. And they, well,
Yeah.
she cries. It's okay. She's a woman. So,
Did you?
I did not. I mean, I knew what I was stepping into. And I just said, I'm not going to cry. I am not going to cry at this deposition. I'm going to be compassionate. And I'm gonna, be as nice as I can be. I'm certainly not gonna go in there and be a witch. I'm gonna be compassionate, but at the same time, I'm not going to let my emotions get the best of me. Mm-hmm. You know, when a mom's sitting there and she's showing you pictures of her baby in a casket, and she's telling that story, it's hard. It was hard, and you were at my last trial. You know I get emotional even in opening and closing. I get emotional, because I'm so passionate about my clients.
Yeah.
And so sometimes my voice cracks, and I got to get myself back in check, because I want the jury to understand how important this is.
Yeah.
And so I was able to get in and get out of there without totally losing control. But I do remember that vividly, how hard that was to sit through. And I can't imagine being that mom and her sitting there having to tell her story. Wow. She did it with grace, and she certainly was emotional, but she did it with grace, and she did a good job. But I just remember that as my first experience, and that it was bad. And then I was out of the case, so I have no idea whatever happened to the case. The bad thing is, so many times we get calls from people who have lost a loved one, whether it's at a nursing home or a hospital or in a car accident. And, they have a bad outcome and they lose a family member. But there are times where there's just not negligence, or we can't prove negligence. And so, we'll do our best, but there's just so many times where even though you've got this terrible loss, you don't have the negligence. And those
so you don't have a wrongful death claim.
So you don't have a wrongful. Then those are just unfortunate outcomes, because a bad outcome doesn't necessarily mean that we have a wrongful death claim or a negligence claim.
Yeah.
But they're always, we always try to listen to those callers and collect as much information as we can with that, so that we can give them the best answer possible, whether we can help them or whether we think that there may be some issues, but I have had folks just show up and talk to me and they say, 5 other attorneys have turned me down, but they won't tell me why,
Oh, wow.
And so I don't mind sitting down, especially whenever they've lost a loved one, and kind of telling them what we see, what the concerns are.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of times that gives them a little bit of, it's not what they want to hear, but maybe in the long run it gives them a little bit of peace.
Yeah.
So the last thing that we can talk about with wrongful death that I want to touch on before we call it a day here.
Okay.
And get off this very heavy subject. Very heavy.
Yeah.
And man, I hope the haters don't send emails. I mean, I've tried to address it as delicately as I could, but the last thing, and this is one of the, one of the things that prompted us to do this podcast was a call we got several weeks ago.
Yeah.
So this lady called and said that her mother had died and it was a bad situation, and she thought it was, I think she had died in a nursing home, and she believed that she had a wrongful death claim. And I said, well, when did your mother die? And she told me a date that was it was like a year and 10 months prior. I think we were only like 6 weeks from the statute. And I said, well, ma'am, I said, you've got a statute of limitations issue. She's thinking she has a negligence issue, and it's a 3-year statute.
Oh, the statute of limitations are different.
Yeah, so with wrongful death claims, the statutes are different. They're shorter in North Carolina. And so that's one reason why you need to hire an attorney, because if you're, in Wilmington recently, we had a pedestrian, this weekend, we had a pedestrian hit, and he passed away at the scene. Well, in a typical auto case like that, it's 3 years, unless it's a wrongful death, and then it's 2 years. So if this family waits before they retain counsel, and they wait beyond that 2-year statute of limitations, their claim is going to be barred. They are not going to have a claim for that wrongful death. And this is the same situation this lady was in, was that she was 6 weeks away now from a statute that she thought was a year and 6 weeks away. And we turned her down because there is no way that I can gather all the things I need to do to file a med mal case in 6 weeks.
And you would have to file the med mal before claiming wrongful death?
Right, yes.
Okay.
So the wrongful death would be part of the med mal claim.
Okay.
And so, unfortunately, folks sometimes wait until it's too late. And that's why we always say it's best to talk to an attorney early, even if you don't hire them.
Yeah.
Talk to an attorney early so that you understand what your deadlines are. Because the only thing worse than losing your loved one is also losing the right to pursue a claim on their behalf.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that kind of prompted this podcast today and made us want to talk about it and about the value of a life. This lady's mother had value, and I hope she's able to find someone to help her out with that claim.
Yeah. Whew.
Heavy.
Very heavy.
Yeah.
I think I need a drink.
And we're not going to go anywhere else today on this subject. We're going to just end it there and just say thanks for tuning in. And we appreciate you listening to Laughter in the Law. There's not a lot of laughter today, but it's a very important subject. And we hope something we've said has been helpful. And we'll come back next time with more laughter in the law.
Yeah, because we talk about the law with a lighthearted twist.